So this video was actually something I recorded quite a while ago. In fact, I recorded it in like 2024. I was going to do a much longer form video, but I decided to break that up, and just because I simply haven't been shooting that much and I want to stick to my schedule of one video a week, I'm going to split it up and just talk about some individual film stocks that are low ISO, and today I'm going to start off with this Kodak Duplicating film. Now, for those of you who don't know what Kodak Duplicating film is, you can kind of imply what it's for, duplication. I didn't know that duplication film was really a thing when I bought this. In fact, I bought this from a lab that was shutting down here in my city, and they had gone ahead and respooled it. The film is ISO 1.6, and that's one of the reasons why I bought it, was that I needed a challenge and I just wanted to see if I could shoot handheld with 1.6 during the middle of the day, which I don't think is very possible during winter. Like maybe on a really good winter's day you can go ahead and do so, but during summer when the sun is a lot closer and brighter to the earth, yeah, you can go ahead and shoot at ISO 1.6. You will have to have an external meter, and probably not a Sekonic, but more likely a light meter on your phone, just to be able to meter correctly, because your camera will not be able to meter that low. So what does that kind of look like? Well, ISO 1.6 means that you're going to be shooting around f1.4 and 60th of a second. This means that your photos will start to induce some blurring with any object that is moving a bit more than a brisk walking pace. And that means that you are going to get quite soft on the outside of your image. But if you're okay with being one of those wide open people, then sure, go ahead. You can go ahead and photograph like that with this kind of film stock, but really, that's just insane too. But the point was, could you go ahead and shoot it handheld? Could I go ahead and do that? And I found that very much to be the case. So, like I've said, this is a duplication film and it's designed for duplicating. I was planning to go ahead and do that this year with some duplication film stock as a specialty project slash video, but currently I don't have the necessary gear or equipment, and I'm just kind of waiting until it's the right time to have that gear and equipment. So maybe at the end of the year you might see a video from me on that. If not, it'll be next year hopefully. But my point that I'm trying to get around to is, can you use this film for non-duplication purposes? And the answer is kind of. When you shoot it wide open, the colors, whilst not natural, you get these very aqua, bright blues. They're not exactly unpleasing. In fact, I think if you go shoot them around a beach or something like that, you get a very, I guess, kind of like the texture and color of some of those Fuji wannabe film looking emulations. You know the ones I'm talking about that have that unnatural blue? That's what this film stock provides if you go ahead and shoot it at a fast shutter speed of like 1/60th. However, if you are going to go ahead and shoot it for longer exposures, which is what I did because I wanted to take some photos with some depth, that's when the usage for this film stock for being something different from what is out there and giving you a unique look starts to fall apart. One, things get a bit more muddy looking, but they get this weird like orange tone over most of the image, and the blue turns way more towards a green, as you can see by this photo here. And the sky also turns a bit more yellow, as you can see by this photo here. In many ways, this film stock kind of reminds me of expired film. The difference is that you've still got a reasonable amount of saturation. But would I use it normally for taking any photographs? No. It simply just doesn't have a look that is that pleasing. So for those of you out there wanting to go ahead and test, I mean, I'm not going to stop you, I do the same thing, but I wouldn't recommend this film stock for any form of color production. It'll be probably more than fine for color reproduction, which is what its intended purpose is, but I wouldn't use this for day-to-day artwork or to just have a different look from everyone else, unless you really want to lean heavily into this look. Overall, the film does actually contain quite a bit of detail and sharpness, which is definitely a good thing. Like, even those very open shots still contain quite a bit of information. One thing that I found quite interesting is that for ISO 1.6 doesn't mean that there is like no grain. If you do zoom in far enough, you will find it, but it's definitely not as noticeable as, let's say, a Color 200 film stock. But just because it's ISO 1.6 doesn't mean that it's grainless. Just a little thing to note. This film stock does remind me of like expired film, like I've mentioned before, but it also kind of reminds me of some expired like slide film, except with a greater degree of dynamic range, and also including some of those color shifts that can happen with slide film, mainly in that magenta like I've mentioned. One thing to note is the greens in this film stock aren't very good. It is weird, mushed, purple, reddish looking. I've never really seen a film stock really do this. That is a color film stock that I can think of from my memory. So that's the other thing too about this. Like I said, it's really good for like sunny environments, beaches and everything else. But I would try and reduce the amount of green images, or green objects should I say, in your image. It's not going to come out tonally very well or very vibrant, unless that's what you're looking for. If you're wanting to reduce the forest in your image and then have the items around anything that is green and alive, then sure, go ahead and do that. But yeah, it was just another weird thing that I noticed with this film stock when it came to how it reproduced those colors. With duplication film, the reason why I think it has some really weird color shifts is simply because I'm shooting it in a way that it's not intended to. Duplication film is designed to work against normal negative color film, and normal negative color film has an orange mask. I'm not shooting this against anything orange or through anything orange. So therefore, this film stock is going to translate colors weirdly or incorrectly. I would think that if, say for example, I had like a warming or browning or a slight orange filter, like those used for tungsten film stocks, that I may indeed get images with truer colors. But I currently only have one more roll of this film stock, and I am planning to use it for a specialty duplication project, like I mentioned, some point later this year or next year. So if I can get hold of another roll from the same stock or slash batch, then yeah, I might go ahead and see if I can get the colors to shift correctly, because yeah, that way I've got something a little bit different from everyone else. But yeah, that's probably one way that you could go ahead and get this film stock to actually look much more aligned with how the world actually looks, but that would only be a guess. Anyways, as always, it's been real, guys.